diminishing slowly from something I'd hoped would be full and wonderful at the age of 22 to something painfully empty by the time I'd reached 25. I wasn't old, but at this moment, I felt ancient and weary down to my bones. I glanced up just as the first drop of rain touched my face. Normally, I'd pull up a hood and protect my out-of-control curly hair from frizz, worried about how I'd look to Lance and the carefully chosen people with whom he surrounded himself. He called them friends, but none knew the meaning of the word. Instead, I embraced the wildness of the storm that suddenly threatened to release from the heavens. Each warm droplet hit and spread across my cheeks, cleansing my skin and my soul. The wind took flight, lifting my hair, blowing strands onto my face and setting the rest of me free. "Isabelle!" Lance yelled down from the window he'd opened on the second floor of his Hampton summer home. It had been too long since I'd considered any part of it mine, if I ever had. I unwillingly looked up. "You've had your tantrum. Now come back inside and we'll talk like civilized people. You don't want to cause a scene in front of the neighbors." Heaven forbid, I thought, sparing a last glance at the place I'd lived for too long. The house was Lance Daltrey's showplace, just as I had been nothing more than an accessory. I may have organized his personal life and thrown obligatory dinner parties, but I'd contributed nothing of substance. He'd never allowed me to spend any of the money I'd earned before I quit my interior design job. Unnecessary, he'd said. If I loved him, I'd stay home and take care of the house. More like he'd wanted control, and I'd given it to him. Luckily for me, I'd saved a good amount from those early days. Not so luckily, I'd let Lance invest my money and maintain control of those accounts. And what were the chances that money would be available for my withdrawal on Monday morning? I closed my eyes at the thought. Although I'd been in Manhattan for a couple of years by the time I'd met Lance, I was still the naive girl who'd taken a bus from a small town near Niagara Falls and traveled to the big city alone. Too bad I hadn't had the street smarts to peg Lance for the phony he'd turned out to be. "Isabelle!" he yelled down to me again, not bothering to come out in the rain to talk to me, let alone apologize like a man. Not when the rain would ruin his $1,000 suit and $100 haircut. Not talking, I thought silently, and merely shook my head. Talk was what had gotten me to remain in a relationship I knew I didn't want with a man I couldn't trust. It was what had convinced me that Lance, a Wall Street trader, was my soulmate, when, in the deepest part of my heart, I knew there was no such thing. And, most humiliating, talk was what had led me to believe his lies, despite knowing I wasn't truly satisfied with him or in his gilded cage. I didn't need therapy to tell me why I'd been so susceptible to Lance's charm and desire to own me. The childhood I didn't like to think about held the answers. But having escaped him now, one thing was certain. I wasn't going back. "Would you quit being a child and get back here?" Lance tried once more, patronizing me even though he was the one in the wrong. Another favorite ploy of his. Shaking, I climbed into my beloved car, slamming the door and escaping Lance's tirade. I started the engine and paused, breathing in deep, the events of the last few minutes rushing through my brain like a bad film. I'd been on our shared laptop, searching for recipes I'd stored there. Seeing a file I didn't recognize, I'd clicked, and the graphic, sexual images of a naked and sweaty Lance, along with my beautiful neighbor, who dared to call herself my friend, had flashed on the screen. Nausea had risen at the visual proof of what I'd only suspected before. I shivered at the memory of those images, proud of how I'd walked out without a word, or a suitcase. My body was frozen, my heart encased in ice. Although I could turn on the heated seats, the reminder of what it felt like to be numb with betrayal would keep me safe in the future. I turned on the ignition, but surprisingly, no waterworks mixed with the dampness from the rain. Instead,